Next time you see a lovely family hanging out together at the park or having dinner together, just think that this could all just be one big lie. This case is a perfect example of how you can't trust anyone, not even your own family. Hi, my name's Yasmin and I make videos about things that are scary, disturbing, or just true crime. Every single story I tell will always be true, and if you'd like to follow along, then please subscribe, give the video a thumbs up, and we'll get on with the rest of the story. Thomas Bartlett Whitaker, also known as Bart to anyone who knew him well, grew up in a very middle to upper class household. Him and his family lived in an area called Sugarlands, Texas, which is just outside of Houston, Texas. Most people who lived in this area had very white-collar jobs, and it's a very, very safe place to bring up a family, and Bart's family seemed to fit the mold. Growing up, Bart would hang out with his little brother Kevin and all the neighborhood kids, and his parents, Patricia and Kent, were very friendly and familiar with all the other families in the neighborhood. Patricia and Kent had very busy lives though, so Patricia was an elementary school teacher, and Kent was an accountant who owned a very successful construction company. Despite all their commitments and being so busy, they really made sure to spend a lot of quality time with their two boys. The main ways they sort of showed love to their children was by spending quality time with them, but also buying some really expensive gifts for them from time to time. Bart overall did very well in school, and his parents were so proud of him that they gifted him not one but a few luxury cars while he was a teenager, which is certainly out of the norm for most kids that were his age. But like many teenage boys, he hid things from his parents and did get into trouble from time to time, but he started to get into some serious trouble during his later teen years. In fact, he ended up getting a conviction for a robbery that was orchestrated by him when he was just 17 years old. His parents, of course, forgave him for this, and they were just looking up. He seemed like he really regretted his actions, and he wanted to go to university, so that's exactly what he did. He put the past behind him and he started to attend Baylor University in 2001, and he later transferred to Sam Houston University, and by December of 2003, Bart had already sat his final exams and was due to graduate very, very soon. On December 10th, 2003, Bart, his parents, and his little brother went out for a celebratory dinner at Papado's Seafood Kitchen, which was only about 10 minutes away from their house. They had such a good time at this dinner. They were laughing, they were joking the whole time. At the end of dinner, after their desserts and everything, his parents gifted him a very, very nice $4,000 Rolex watch, which he had always wanted. Bart was super thankful and appreciative of this generous gift, and eventually a wonderful evening came to an end. The family loaded back up into the car and they all drove home in one car together. Once the family had arrived home, Kevin hopped out of the car first because he wanted to go and unlock the front door, and then he was closely followed by Patricia and then Kent. Bart had also started walking towards the house, but he actually forgot his phone in the car, so he went back to go and get it. So the rest of the family were just a little bit ahead of him and continued to enter the house. Kevin proceeded to just unlock the front door and he entered the house. The first room he walked into was the living room, but as soon as he stepped over that threshold to get into the room, he was shot in the chest, quickly followed by his mum and dad, who were also both shot in the chest. Bart rushed into the living room to see what was going on, and he also got shot in the arm. By the time anyone could even figure out what was going on, the shooter had already left. No one could get a glimpse of him. Every one of them, apart from Bart, was just in critical condition. Bart was the only one who was able to access his phone, so of course he got his phone out and he started calling the police immediately. The dispatcher on the phone was keeping him there until the police arrived, and obviously they asked the important questions like what's the address, what actually happened. He said to them that they escaped so quickly out of the back door that he didn't even have a chance to have a look at them. At the same time, a neighbor had also called the police because they heard the gunshots, and they actually rushed over to the Whitaker household. The first person they helped was Kent because he was conscious and desperately needed some help. He was bleeding out. So they added pressure to his chest until an ambulance arrived. which is possibly what saved his life. Sadly though, Kevin died at the scene, and Patricia was airlifted to be taken to hospital, but unfortunately, she also died due to her injuries. Bart and Kent, on the other hand, were both rushed to the same hospital, which was the Memorial Hermann Hospital, and police officers followed them to the hospital because they wanted to speak to them both. They started with Bart because he had pretty minor injuries compared to Kent, like it wasn't really life-threatening being shot in the arm. They just asked him to give a rundown of what actually happened that night. Bart explained things in a little bit more detail about what happened that night. So he said that they were out for a graduation dinner and that when they came home there was an intruder in the house who was a male, and he really couldn't see much of the intruder because it was so dark and he escaped so quickly. The investigators got an account from Kent as well. Kent just thought it was a burglary gone wrong. And he said something really surprising that I actually don't think a lot of people would be thinking at this point, and I feel like it really highlights just the kind of person that Kent is, just a really angelic and caring person. He basically said that whoever did this, whoever shot and killed his wife and his son, he forgives them, which obviously goes without saying is a really hard thing to do. The police at the same time were at the scene and they were just investigating what had been left behind and what had actually happened, and there appeared to be some drawers that were opened and some closets that were opened, but nothing was actually taken from the house. There was a gun safe all the way on the other side of the house, quite far from the back door, which is where all of this happened, where a gun safe was pried open, and the gun actually belonged to Kevin. So this was a gun that was gifted from Bart to Kevin a few years back, and it almost seemed like these burglars knew where to find the gun. There was also a black glove left at the scene. In terms of a burglary, things were really not adding up. So to gather more information, they had a closer look into Bart because he already lied to the police. He told them that he was graduating from university, but they found out very quickly that Bart was actually never even enrolled in university, and that he'd been telling his friends and family a huge lie for years and nobody knew. Not even his girlfriend knew, who he was going out with since high school. This is such a big deal to lie about, so he must be lying about other things, surely. When Kent was actually told this information, just to see his reaction, he was kind of shocked, but he didn't really see his son any differently, really. And same with his girlfriend. She felt a little bit bad for him, but she accepted him for the way he was. But this was a major red flag for the investigators. Why would he lie about going to university? And how could he lie for so long to everyone's face about something so major in his life? Surely a person who's capable of living a lie is capable of doing other things and lying about them as well. Less than a week after the ordeal, someone by the name of Adam Hipp came to the police station, and he asked to speak to the lead investigator because he wanted to give them a little bit more information. So Adam went to Clements High School, which is the same high school that Bart went to, and they were actually pretty close friends. Bart would always talk to him about how much he hated his parents, and eventually, out of the blue it seemed like, he approached Adam for something very disturbing. He was planning on killing his family back in 2001, and he asked for Adam's help to complete the task. So you're thinking, why would he want to do this? Well, his family had a fortune of $1.5 million that he could potentially inherit, and he was going to give a cut of this to Adam if he was going to help him kill his parents. So why would the police believe Adam in the first place? Adam explained the plot to the investigators before the investigators even told them about what had happened in this case. He drew a diagram using stick figures, and he basically said what was supposed to happen on April 5th, 2001, and it perfectly matched what had happened the night of the murders. He even mentioned that Bart told him to shoot him in the arm so that police would not be suspicious of him. Lucky for Adam though, he had a solid alibi that night. He was working at the bank and you could clearly see when he clocked in and when he clocked out, so he was completely cleared as a subject. Police thought if Bart had approached a friend in the past, what's to say he didn't do it again? So they ended up interviewing a roommate from Baylor University, and his name was Justin Peters. And little did they know, they hit a jackpot. Justin admitted that Bart had tried to recruit him at the same time as Adam for the murder that was planned in 2001. But not only that, Bart tried to recruit him in the year 2000 as well for the same reason, to kill his whole family. But when they actually tried to enter the house alarm went off, and it sort of set things off in a way that wasn't supposed to happen. So the plan was aborted twice in a row. Neither Adam nor Justin were involved in the 2003 murder though. The police had pretty good luck into looking into Bart's friends, so they dug a little bit deeper just to see who else was his close friend in general, and they found two other people of interest, was Chris Brashear and Stephen Champagne. And they were close to Bart because they all worked in the same place, which was the Bentwater Country Club. Both of them were brought into the station for questioning. They also had to give scent samples for a scent lineup, which basically resulted in bloodhounds coming in and smelling the glove that was left at the scene and matching it to Chris's scent, indicating that he'd been the one who had been in contact with it. Things are really not looking good for Bart at this point, but the police needed some cold hard evidence to prove that he was actually behind all of this. Therefore, Adam negotiated a non-prosecution agreement for his involvement in the April 2001 crime in exchange for his cooperation with the police. Adam was asked to record conversations between him and Bart over the phone to see if he could get him to confess. In one of the conversations, Adam told Bart that he would actually be leaving to Dallas to talk to the police face to face about the 2001 plan. But Bart kind of panicked and said that he would give him $20,000 if he didn't mention his involvement in it at all. Adam accepted the bribe under police instructions, obviously, and he asked Bart to send the deposit over to a P.O. box, which the police had access to as well, of course. But $240 cash was received in the mailbox, with a return address being listed as Bart's home. And they were also able to further verify that it was Bart because of the scent, and his fingerprints were all over the mail. Bart would be an idiot not to realize that the police were after him. So in June of 2004, he told his dad that he was going to head out to a club with some friends, but instead he drove the Chevy Yukon to an apartment building complex and just parked it there with the engine running. Then he just left for an entire year. He was gone. No one knew where he was. Finally though, in August of 2005, Stephen Champagne couldn't handle the pressure anymore and he spilt all the beans. He agreed to meet with investigators at a local Starbucks and proceeded to tell them the events of that dreadful night. This is what happened that night. On the night of the murders, Bart left the back door unlocked before heading out for his graduation dinner. Stephen drove Chris to the house, where Chris actually entered through that unlocked back door, and he quickly got to work. He located exactly where the concealed gun safe was, as per Bart's instructions, and he pried it open with a chisel. He also just haphazardly opened some drawers and cupboards just to make it look like someone was burgling the house, but he didn't touch any of the belongings, which kind of gave it away that it wasn't a burglary. In the meantime, Stephen left Chris and he drove all the way out to Papado's Seafood Kitchen, and he parked just outside the restaurant and waited for the family to finish their meal. Once he saw that they finished their meal and they were heading out to come to their cars, Chris quickly drove back to the property and let Stephen know that they were on their way. Chris got into position and quietly waited for Kevin to open that front door. Once he shut them all, Chris ran back to Stephen's car and they drove off to Lake Conroe, which is where they disposed of all the evidence, really. Stephen ended up taking police to that lake where they were able to recover all the evidence from the crime scene, which included a chisel, which had a little bit of paint from the gun safe on it, a water bottle which had Chris's DNA on it, and some bullets. Arrest warrants were now issued for Chris, Stephen, and Bart. Bart was still nowhere to be found though, until police had a stroke of luck and received a call from somebody named Mike Jones, who told the detective that Bart was actually in Mexico and that he'd fled using this guy's help because he gave him $3,000 to do so. Eventually they found out that Mike's real name was Rogelio Rilos, and that Bart had been hiding in his dad's house in Mexico. Bart probably thought that they were on his case. He actually fled to an area called Monterrey in Mexico, which is where he started a whole new life for himself with like a whole new fake ID and everything. Police were finally able to arrest him when they got him to come to a cafe for a supposed job interview. Kent, Bart's dad, found out that his son was behind all of this. His son was the reason why his wife was no longer alive, or his youngest son. Remarkably, he was still able to forgive Bart for what he had done. Bart received the death penalty for his crimes. Chris received life in prison with the possibility of parole after 30 years, and Stephen received a lower sentence of 15 years due to his testimony against Bart and Chris. It doesn't end there though. While Bart was in prison, his dad would visit him almost on a daily basis, and they became really, really close during this time, closer than they were when Bart was just a civilian. While he was on death row, his father continuously advocated for his son and for them to do anything but kill him. Kent said that if they did execute his son, it would further victimize him and he couldn't live anymore with no family members alive. So he begged them to stop, but nothing seemed to work. Bart was still on death row. February 24th, 2018 rolled around, which was Bart's execution day. His dad came in first thing in the morning to see him one last time. They said their final goodbyes to each other. Bart had his final death row meal. He was about to head over for the lethal injection, but incredibly, 30 minutes before his execution, Governor Greg Abbott took Bart off death row and reduced his sentence to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The chance of this happening is extremely low, and Bart just got lucky that he had a dad like Kent. Bart will spend the rest of his life in prison though, and there's no way he can ever get out. But at least now Kent can still visit his son. His one and only family member is still alive but will be stuck in prison for the rest of his life. That was the story of the Whitaker family murders. If you found that interesting, then please subscribe, give the video a thumbs up, and I will see you in next week's video. Bye.